Hey everyone, my name is Cara Bradley. I'm here with my friend Cheryl Jones, and we are touching on everything mindfulness. In these three series that we're offering you, just a way, an overview of what mindfulness is, why you would want to be mindful, how it can help your life. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about thoughts and emotions. Now, we're going to keep it to about 20 minutes. So it's a big topic to talk about in 20 minutes. So recognize that we're really going to give you an overview, just an understanding of how these practices and mindfulness activities can help you to break free from being so overwhelmed and immersed in thinking in future, in past, and to help you just drop into present moment awareness. So Cheryl, I know you're super passionate about teaching on this subject, so why don't you start us off?
Well, thank you, Kara. This is such an exciting conversation to be able to have and to share with others because the mind and our busy minds, sometimes we call it the monkey mind because tend to jump from one thought to another. And so if you're listening and you're thinking that that was just your mind, please know that it's, your mind, it's my mind, it's the human mind. And so we call this an untrained mind because we know that so often we have a preoccupation with the future. We're either worrying or we're problem solving or we're planning or we're thinking about the past. We're replaying old tapes and we're remembering. So the mind is either in the future or the past most of the time. And the present moment keeps getting squashed out. And the present moment is really the only moment that any of us can love, learn, grow, change, press the reset button. And so we want to be able to notice when our mind is kind of gone off to the races and we're spending too much time worrying about things that may or may not happen because that's what we do, right? As a lot of times we worry about things that a lot of times don't end up happening, or we spend so much time planning to get this perfect plan. And I'm not saying that we should never plan. I'm hopefully going to plan a wonderful vacation for this summer, and I'm certainly planning for how I'm going to budget my money to pay for tuition, and I'm going to plan for my retirement. So of course we're going to plan, but I'm talking about that almost obsessive, like constant worrying or constantly being in a state of planning, or constantly replaying old tapes from the past. Where in a therapeutic intervention, of course, we want to reflect and be able to take what we learn and move it forward. But again, I'm talking about just thoughts. We also know that about 80% of our thoughts are negative. And there's a reason for this. Again, if you're thinking that it's just my mind, why does my mind think all these negative thoughts? It's the human mind. We are wired for fight or flight. And so we're wired to be always on the lookout for danger. And so while we're looking for danger because of our fight or flight, protective mechanism, sometimes we end up focusing and thinking more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. So it's not about replacing, negative thoughts with positive thoughts and telling ourselves, don't think that, think positively. It's not about that. Mindfulness is about noticing what are the thoughts going through my mind. And let me see if I can stop just for a minute, put 2 feet on the ground, bring my awareness to my breath, and notice one thought at a time as it parades through my mind. Notice the thought without judgment. You don't have to label it as a good thought or a bad thought. It's just a thought. So we can notice the thought, and then let it go, release it, and bring the attention back to breathing in and breathing out. And so that, my friends, is a skillful way of being with our thoughts. First, noticing without judgment. First, noticing that I have all these thoughts.
Mhm.
And secondly, beginning to build our capacity to notice thoughts or observe them without judging them. And then being able to recenter ourselves or anchor ourselves in the present moment. And we do that by paying attention to our breathing. So, what
Yeah.
would you like to add to that, Cara?
Well, yeah, and that was so well said and so succinct, really. I know as a mindfulness teacher and working with so many people, oftentimes people say to me, and I know I felt this way, I can't stop. It just doesn't stop. It never stops. There's always the noise in my head. Or as Michael Singer, one of my favorite books, The Untethered Soul, he talks about it being the roommate in your head. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, there's always that roommate talking to me. And one thing that has really helped me personally, and I often share when I'm teaching, is that we're not going to stop our mind from thinking. You know, our brains are thinking machines. It's actually what brains do, besides a lot of other things, but it produces thoughts. Just like our nose smells and our eyes see and our body senses and our ears hear, our brain thinks. So this practice, these practices and everything that we're talking about, Cheryl, this present moment awareness, this capacity to be here now, isn't about stopping thoughts. It's about changing our relationship with thinking. So if we think about for a moment how we recognize a smell. So I often use the example of walking by a Starbucks in New York City. You know, when you walk by that Starbucks and somebody opens the door, you're going to smell coffee. It's very, it's almost inevitable. You're going to smell the coffee. But if you walk straight past that Starbucks, that smell will go away and you won't be hung up on the smell of the coffee unless you really want one and want to turn around and go get yourself, a grande. But for the most part, you'll walk by that smell and it will be gone. Our thinking mind is very much the same way. Thoughts will come and go. And if we don't follow the thought down a path into a story, that thought will just, like a soap bubble, it will come and it will go. And so our practices can help us to change our relationship with our thinking mind, just like we have this very come and go relationship with smells or sights. And so for me, that was helpful personally. I know it was a real game changer when I recognized that this whole practice isn't about stopping our thoughts. It's just about getting to know what, like you said, Cheryl, what is going on in my mind without all the judging.
One other thought that I would like to share, kind of again piggybacking on what you've said, Cara, is that when we are experiencing a stress event, we have the event itself. I my daughter broke her wrist, and we had to have surgery over the holidays. So when I first got the call, that's a stress event. And then there's all of the thinking that gets attached to that. What if she misses her finals? What if she gets kicked out of her major? What if I can't get, like, all of the what ifing, all of the catastrophizing, all of the, always and never, something always happens around the holidays, all this stressful thinking on top of the stress event itself. So my mindfulness practice has really helped me to be very aware of okay, here's the stress. This is real. I've perceived this as being a really stressful thing that's happening. And then there's, what does my mind do with this? So catching myself when I notice my mind going into one stressful thought after another. And again, 2 feet on the ground, bringing my body into an upright posture, creating a pause, breathing in and out, and noticing without any self criticism what are those stressful thoughts that are going through my mind. Because if I can notice them, get back to body homeostasis, out of fight or flight, back to rest and digest, I'm not going to cause myself more suffering. There's suffering and there's optional suffering. Stressful thinking is exacerbating my stress level. So I would like to put that out there, that as we become aware of our thoughts without judgment, we can actually, again, bring ourselves back to the moment, to the body, to the breath, and minimize our suffering.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and what I've experienced as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more towards the end of this talk about the formal meditation practice. But what has been significant in my own life is because of consistent practice, just like we're talking about the awareness of the breath, the awareness of the body, now the awareness of thoughts. The more we do it, the more we notice, the better we get at noticing. And what happens over time with all of this noticing is that we actually change the way that our brain operates. And, because I know in the past, I mean, I used to be extraordinarily stressed and very anxious and such a thinker. I couldn't turn it off. But I know now, because of practice, that my physiology has changed. And a pithy, little pithy saying that in the mindfulness world, in the science, in neuroscience, that neurons that fire together wire together. So what Cheryl is saying is that because of her practice, she has become so hyper aware of her thinking that she's able to catch herself more quickly now before she heads down that road to struggle and more stress. So when we practice and notice, we get better at noticing before we get too stressed, before we say something that we don't mean, before we do something that is not helpful for us or for others. So this is part of this practice of mindfulness, of cultivating this present moment awareness that can be so life-changing, and it has been for me.
And we can do the same thing with feelings. This
Mm.
awareness of thoughts is part of the awareness, and the other part is awareness of feelings or of emotions. And so, up until 25 years ago, we really weren't even taught to value our emotions. If you showed any emotion, you were called, oh, you're just being irrational, or you're stop being so emotional, right? That, now with Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, that was the first time, again, I'm probably dating myself here, but that I realized, oh my goodness, there's a science, there's so much wisdom here, the emotions have so much value. And in mindfulness practice, we create space to acknowledge feelings as they are, because the truth is they are a valuable part of our being. So, how do we do this, right? Because sometimes emotions are very strong, they may be very subtle. The strong emotions like fear or anger, even rage or grief, excitement, even, extreme happiness. I say the dumbest things when I'm excited. So I use my mindfulness practice to even manage my happiness and excitement. And so it's not that we want to dull it all down and just be like this, monotone. It's not about that. It's about acknowledging whatever is true within us. But let's just say, for this conversation's sake, that we are managing a difficult emotion, right? That our tendency is to have an aversion to feeling that sadness or that anger, because, as men, you're taught it's okay to be angry but not sad. As women, we're taught that it's okay to be sad but not angry. So we have all this social conditioning around even what emotions are even acceptable. And in mindfulness practice and in life and in the human journey, of course, all feelings are acceptable. So mindfulness is about creating space to practice being with what is. So we can tune into, what am I feeling right now? Just like we do with thoughts. What are the thoughts going through my mind? What are the feelings that are present? And maybe even noticing somewhere in the body that we experience an emotion. That can be possible too. So simply creating space to acknowledge whatever feeling we are experiencing and not judging it.
Mm.
And as we're able to do this, as we're able to be with our own feelings rather than either, have an aversion or suppress them, which we know is not going to help us, that as we cultivate awareness of our own emotions, helps us to build resilience. John Kabat-Zinn has a quote: "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." And so when we sit with ourselves and with strong and sometimes difficult emotions, and we realize that, okay, I can do this. I can always come back to my breath. If any feeling becomes a little bit too much, I can always come back to my breath, because my breath is my anchor to the present moment. So I'm safe. I can always come back to my breath, and I can explore whatever feeling I'm feeling. And as I do that, I build my confidence. I learn to trust that, oh, I do have within me whatever I need to deal with whatever life presents me with. So it helps to build resilience, helps to build our self-efficacy, our belief that we can change, our belief that we have within us what we need to be successful. And it also helps us to build our emotional intelligence. So if I can be in tune with my own feelings, then I can also be more skillful at noticing how other people may be feeling. And I can bring that level of skillfulness to my conversations and create healthier relationships, both at home and at work.
Mm. Wonderful. Thank you for putting it that way, because a lot of people are very confused. They think that once they practice meditation or they're becoming more mindful, that they're becoming more muted, that there aren't the highs and the lows. And, we don't want to control our excitement or extreme experiences. And that's part of the full catastrophe of being a human being, is to, experience the full gamut of emotions. One thing that I often think about and remind myself and students that I teach, that the Tibetan word for meditation is gom, Gom. And gom simply means to become familiar with. To become familiar with. And I think what you're saying, Cheryl, is that being aware of emotions or feelings is the mindfulness of this practice is to become familiar with what it is you're feeling, to sit with it, to give it a little bit more time than you normally would to investigate. It's an investigation. And you don't always have to investigate with words. In fact, sometimes too many words and the over analyzing of everything we feel it just gets us entangled in more thinking. So one practice and a simple mindfulness activity would be to just investigate the path along which this emotion is arising. Like you said, in your body. How does sadness feel in my body? How does grief feel in my body, or anger? Where do I first feel the signs of stress starting to rise? For all of us, it's different. For some people, for me, it's my throat and my heart rate. For some people, they start sweating, or they feel their face tighten, or their gut clench. So this is the investigation of becoming more mindful. And so what happens with emotion in particular is that when we become more familiar with different emotions and how they feel physically, and in our breath, and even mentally, we can start to catch ourselves in those unhelpful emotions, maybe catch ourselves before we put our foot in our mouth, right? Or before we do something that is unkind. And this is where it becomes not just a me practice, but a we practice, where we become more agreeable in the world and more helpful to others when we can truly be in what is happening with what is happening in a more skillful way and a more helpful way. So Cheryl, what can you give us a couple of activities that we can carry, because the series has been more about mindfulness, activities that we can carry with us throughout the day when it comes to emotions and thoughts?
So true, Cara. It's their formal practice, which we both have those kinds of tools and resources to help folks cultivate a formal practice. And I would say for day to day living, for now, just for now, like to get started, to start driving with the radio off. If you're used to coming in and, putting the TV on when you come home from work, or, first thing in the morning, just start to quiet things so that you can hear yourself think and feel what you feel. So I think, as we're going into the new year, again, we get into this striving mode. We want to change this, we want to change that. And what I would invite us to do is simply start to create some space to turn things off, to quiet life a bit so that we can start to become familiar and to notice what are the thoughts going through the mind, what are the feelings that are present for me. And so start to create some space in the day, some quietness in the day to honor whatever is true. And so I think that might be a nice, gentle way to come into our emotions and to start to notice, the many thoughts racing through the mind.
Mm. The power of the pause,
Mm.
for sure. And in the pauses, we can return to our breath, the awareness of breathing. In those pauses, we can tune into our body, how we're moving, how we're sensing what our body is telling us, the awareness of our body. And in those pauses, as you said, Cheryl, we can then become familiar with our thoughts and emotions and the feelings that we carry and sometimes amplify or ignore in our lives. So this has been so much fun, Cheryl. You and I have been chatting about just kind of pressing record and getting our thoughts out there to folks that may not have access to teachers right now. I know, and I'm sure, Cheryl, you feel the same way. What we're offering to you is really just a very simple conversation to open up your awareness a bit about what mindfulness is and how to be mindful in the world. But there's never a substitute for a live teacher and for people that have experience that you can sit with, that you can learn from in a live setting. So if you can go out there and find yourself a class to attend, preferably a series, an 8-week series, that is going to be super helpful in really grounding you in these practices. And anything to add there, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think that those are great suggestions, Cara. And I think there is no cookie cutter approach. So there's no right, there's no wrong. It's about whatever feels natural and appropriate for you. And so it's about meeting yourself where you are and identifying, what is a baby step that you can take. And it won't be the same for everyone. There are many ways to establish a mindfulness practice. So hopefully what we've shared today and through this series will inspire you to continue to take baby steps, and hope that you'll find useful the many tools and resources that we have on our respective websites. And again, my name is Cheryl Jones, and my website is themindfulpath.com.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. And carabradley.net is where you can find me and my work as well and my teachings. And please feel free to leave some comments down below in the below the description. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us. Let us know if you want more. We're happy to get on and record a bunch more, because Cheryl and I have a lot more to talk about, a lot more to share. So thank you all so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day, and go out there and share your mindfulness practices with others. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.